Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnelle Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. Mitch, I know we're looking for a working title, but we cannot name the podcast The Business of Theater. I will be singing If I Were a Bell and On the Steps of the Palace.
I just sat through two college showcases in which they did. So no, please do not sing those.
Those are like the songs that play that are at every audition, and everybody is so proud when they're about to announce them. And this is the fourth time we've heard
And for
it.
those of us of a certain age, Corner of the Sky from Pippin was every three people used to sing them at an audition. They wouldn't shut up. It was the song you just wanted to strangle people. Of course, before that, it was Feelings. For those of you who are really old, you know how annoying that song became. So, yeah.
Funny, okay, so welcome to the podcast. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnelle Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And let's get down to business. So, as we are recording this, the Oscars happened the night before, and I don't know. There is a conversation about the relevance of all of these award shows, and we know that the ratings for the Tony Awards are embarrassingly low, no matter how great the opening number is, because we can always remember the opening number and talk about how phenomenal it was. But then the next day, it's like, I don't know why CBS keeps keeps allowing this to happen.
Yeah.
I think The Equalizer gets more viewers than the Tony Awards.
To be official about this, is CBS, the Tony Awards, is the lowest rated special of every year. It is the last on the list because it is a specialized audience. New York, LA, and a lot of theater nerds around the country, and that's it.
Yeah.
So now on the other hand, we have cable TV and streaming now. You don't need the largest audience in the world, which is why I heard they had considered moving it to a streaming service or to even PBS at one point, because they thought we can't sustain the loss of income on CBS in prime time. But it's still, it also wins the Emmy for Best Special most years. So that's a positive thing to say about it. It's very well produced.
If you think about it, the Tony Awards is a great example of the state of theater. It is still phenomenal work being produced, and not enough people are tuning in.
There you go. And the numbers haven't changed. Again, I think I may use this statistic too often, but when I was younger, approximately 22% of the tri-state area, meaning New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, had ever seen a show anywhere, meaning high school, college, regional theater, or Broadway. And that number is the same with all the efforts that Disney has made and everyone has made to bring it in. It's still, it has become a tourist attraction, very much like Disney World. So, meaning that, the Wickeds, the Lion Kings, the Book of Mormons, the things that people know are the things that sell the most tickets. And it used to be, we want to see the next new thing. And now it's the oldest thing that we already know, which has been running for 20 or 25 years. That never used to happen. So
Hmm.
Both a good and bad thing, I guess. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
so, but you were talking about the Tonys and the Oscars. By the way, the thing on the Oscars, I have to say this: the part that makes me smile are always when they have a live event like I Am Ken or We Are Ken. Excuse me.
I'm
I'm
just
just
Ken.
Ken. Sorry about that. They had a ball. They just were having fun. And it was
Yes.
live dancing. It was live singing. The same thing, there was a comic who came out and did a great routine on stage. It was live. It was fresh. Everything that is kind of stock footage, to me, makes the Oscars a little bland. So
Hmm.
I kind of like that. But to me, that's what the Tonys is all about. Everything on it is completely live and fresh.
Yeah. And I completely understand all the award shows are a celebration of the year that passed. So we're looking back on things that we may have seen. In the Oscars case, we're mostly looking at things that were out there, but we're just not in our market. Like every most of the short film nominees, like where were these? The Angelica. Yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
was pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all the art house theaters had them very briefly, but they don't get much saturation, so you don't really know. And then the obvious juggernauts. For this year, for example, we know that it was between Barbie and Oppenheimer, and then when you think about how epic a film is, you know that Oppenheimer was going to win,
Oh,
even though Barbie was very popular and very well attended. It just, you know,
yeah. Again, I hate to sound cliche, but when they started going through the nominees for a lot of categories, I was just going, you know what? I couldn't even pick which one was
mm,
better than the other. They were amazing, some especially the acting. And
yeah,
to have to choose one over the other, I mean, that's always the problem, right? You do it because we all like American Idol type contests. Somebody has to win. And that's, maybe we need to do that in theater. Maybe we need to say, come see our 5 shows in our subscription, and you get to choose the one that we actually pay the actors for, or the playwright. And,
no,
no, of course not. But
no, because our conversation is like we often have this conversation in our office. Um, you know, your need to keep prices affordable to patrons is not realistic to how much it costs to actually run this production.
yeah,
And so you think you're budgeting conservatively to make sure you have enough money to actually put on the show, but you're not thinking about realistically how to get a good chunk of this money back. And so, like for instance, like we have at Exile, we have a rate, because we want to make sure our theater is accessible. But often the conversation is, but are we paying our bills? Are we paying our bills by keeping our prices the way they are? And then I go to many theaters and I'll see things like I pay attention to everyone's concessions, for example. I want to know what they're charging for popcorn
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
soda and everything. Like, we have a show in our theater right now. They're charging $5 for beer and $7 for wine. That is more than we charge at our concessions. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, so we're either comfortable where we are, or we could stand to raise our price because they are paying for it. I
Well,
mean,
that's
people are paying more. They're just not paying
and
more where we
now
are.
now we get into politics because
Mhm.
as with the this past week's State of the Union address, no doubt was a political campaign speech, but it really does come down to the word subsidize. There are
Mm.
many things in our society that we value, or at least some of us do, that can't pay for its own existence.
Mm.
Theater is one of them,
Yeah.
right? You can charge more on TV commercials if you're going to be on CBS or NBC or the Super Bowl, and somehow they pay their bills. But there are other things that less people either can afford or that less people want to see. but they still cost a lot of money. So the question is, Biden brought up, which is a Democratic concept of we charge the rich more and we subsidize the things that we need and want for people who can't afford it. The Republicans, which I don't yet understand, there used to be a philosophy I understood, but the idea would be, okay, we're not going to ask anybody with money to subsidize anything. Therefore, what happens to that? Do we have more people on the street? Do we not have theater? What do we do? And it's not having the answer to that leads me to say, while I understand the idea of not being taxed, I get that. How do we have roads? How do we have, stoplights and police if we don't?
Roads, where we're going, we don't need
there
roads.
You go. It's time to start singing on the street where I live.
People stop and stare. They don't bother me.
Interesting.
That's all we can
That's all
say.
we can say. And again, it's about money. We can't afford to use a song that made a gazillion.
We can't afford any more seconds.
And who came up with that number, 8 seconds?
It's not covered on Epidemic Sound.
There you go. And so, it's so tricky. It's like what? And just recently, I bought a new domain name for a website. Who determined what that domain name is worth? It's like, who came up with that number? It's an odd number.
Well, I do have a little bit of insight on this. They do charge you more for what's called a premium domain. Mm-hmm. A premium domain is just a flat out word. Like, so for example, when I started Represented Theater Company, I bought represented.org. That was a premium domain name because it wasn't anything else. It was just one word. And in 2021, no, that seems very early. Anyway, at some point, I lost that domain because the same issue you talked about off recording, the same issue you had about accounts. Mm-hmm. The domain had an old credit card and it expired. And so when the domain name lapsed, somebody picked it up very quickly and offered to sell it to me for $3,000. I was like, my entire company brand is represented. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't, like, this is clearly mine, but they owned it and they were like, I'll sell it to you for $3,000. I was like, that's ridiculous.
And while we're at it, I've worked with shows and recording groups that had trademarks, but there are different trademarks in different countries. And of course, depending mm-hmm. on how much money the show or the artist has up front, they're going to go, well, wait a minute, I'm just in the U.S. I'm just going to start here. And then you find out that someone in Australia can buy the same name and apply it to T-shirts because you didn't buy additionally the trademark to use the name on T-shirts. But as far as the group knew, they bought the name. Mm-hmm. So why should somebody be able to make money off of their name? And who do we even complain to, right? And so let's go a step further and
preach into the choir.
We're all there. So, now the question comes down to, we're talking about subsidizing. There are people all across this country who cannot afford their housing, and yet they have jobs. So, you can claim it's greed by a particular landlord, or that's just the way that taxes require the landlords to charge. On and on and on. You come up with that, whatever excuses. We haven't figured this out yet. And other than, we come back to theater. England had this amazing theatrical system based on the fact that the government subsidized all of their theater. And now they stopped doing that. and they are after the pandemic, especially, they are in crisis, and so many places are closing. And I get the idea that, hey, maybe like Broadway, each show should pay for its own or close. Well, that's the question. What if it's good work and somebody wants to keep the price down so that the neighborhood can show up? Well, I don't know. Having $10, $40 tickets in Hamilton doesn't mean it's affordable, because the other people are spending $300 and up. And if you want a decent seat, so now the thing is, if you can't afford the expensive price, are you not entitled to have a decent location? That means, you are the lower end of the class system in the United States, and you only get to watch a show from the last row. The TKTS booth in New York, which was created, there's a long story about that, but it has brought half-price tickets to a lot of people. If you are a disabled senior citizen and it is snowing outside, in order to get a half-price ticket, you must wait online over an hour in the snow or rain to buy a half-price ticket. People who are able and have money, they can buy the same half-price ticket. So now you haven't reached the person who needs the help.
Nope.
So how have we lost our way? Darnelle, I ask you.
I'm apparently society's mouthpiece.
Well, somebody,
please tell me what happened and how do we do this? Well, so there's something I always talk about, how part of the reason this viewership is low for our awards is that we don't have outside partners. It's just everyone who's in the community is the supporter of the community. There's not enough outside people who are just like, we do something totally different over here, but we also support the theater community.
No, there's a problem with that, though, in that theater is a money-losing proposition. I went to had a regular checkup with my eye doctor, and he takes his family to theater all the time. And I just said, have you ever dabbled in investment? Have you ever dabbled in investment? And he said, yeah, I actually tried investing in 2 Broadway shows. He said, I lost my shirt. I'm not going to ever do that again. It's a problem. We don't want to lose the people who believe in supporting theater. And yet we have a system in which more than 80% of all investments are lost.
Well, commercial theater, is definitely
nonprofit.
And then,
my argument with this. You give me a $20 ticket and then tell me I have to donate $100 or else the theater closes. That means you're charging me $120 for the ticket.
And, something I noticed is that, well, something I've theorized, I'm sure it's happening. It's that, we get a lot of checks from foundations or like some sort of release from your portfolio in terms of support. And so when I thought about it, I was like, these are dividends. It's not even money. I mean, it's money that was earned, but it's not really your money. It's like the money you made because your money is sitting in this place. And it makes me think about, like, again, like I said it before, I was like, the younger generation doesn't have this opportunity. We're not homeowners. We're slow to start families. Like we don't have financial literacy. So we're not really thinking about like how to invest and secure that kind of a nest egg that allows us to then give back to the community. And so the people who are giving to the community right now, they're going to die out.
Well,
we're not setting up
two arguments. One, and forgive me for those who think this is socialism. The distance between the rich and the poor is wider than it's ever been. So that's a question. Does that affect our ability to buy homes? And by the way, it's not just young people who can't buy homes, old people can't buy homes either.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and I remember this from many real estate people that I dealt with when I purchased homes, every 8 years, the market drops and starts over. And they said, so when you buy and sell, you need to keep that in mind. Well, I know of people who are trying to sell their home in a very hot market, but everyone in that market has gotten the same news. So there's a glut of homes up for sale, which means no one's buying, or not enough people are buying. So they can't move, which means if they do move, they're not going to make the profit they thought they were going to make on their investment, which now becomes, so really is home buying a good investment? It's going to be different depending on your timing, your situation. This is hard. Investing, how do you know when you have Hamilton or Wicked versus some other show that looks good or has some stars in it, but can't break even? It's everything's a crapshoot. So home ownership, which used to be a steady investment, is as much gambling as is theater investment. The difference is nonprofit theater is not investing. You can never get anything back financially. At least on Broadway, 20% of the chances you'll get your money back at least, which doesn't help you, but at least you get it back.
So let me ask this. Is it hard? Do you think it's hard to support or care about these award shows? The Oscars, the Tonys, the Grammys, the Emmys, SAG. Like, come on, who's watching the SAG Awards?
Well, in our industry.
Oh, wait, let me finish. Is it hard to support these award shows when your personal situation is a struggle session? Or are we just not entertained?
I think the key word is fantasy. I think most of the reason we will watch a detective show, even if no one's been murdered on our block an entire life, is because it's a mystery and it's entertaining. So my issue would be if you can have an entertaining. You know what? I'm going to take that back. Americans and maybe everyone worldwide, we like winners. And everyone likes to see somebody win. So I think if you set up, it's even the detective show, somebody's going to win. The detective is going to get the bad guy. If you see a Tony Award or Emmy Award, someone's going to win and you feel good for them for a minute. Then you go home and you look at your life and you go, gee, I wish I was them. And that's pitiful because we all should be happy with what we're doing in our own lives.
If you just want to watch someone win, you have to watch Press Your Luck on, I think it's on ABC. Because the way they crafted Press Your Luck, this return, it is all about rooting for whoever makes it to the bonus round. It's like, at first, when there's three contestants, you are all about, like, you kind of have your idea on who's going to win. But as soon as somebody advances to that round, the audience and all the players immediately rally behind that person.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it's all about them getting wherever they go to win.
You got Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune.
Oh my God, it's so good.
But that's why the game.
Listeners, watch Press Your Luck. Elizabeth Banks is wonderful, and her fashion is on point.
Okay, that's your opinion. I can't watch it. The stress level of just watching someone push a button and by accident, it's like the lottery.
Going broke by like getting a whammy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't care. I mean, it doesn't mean I can't enjoy the show. Of course, I can. But you want, and that's what you watch Wheel of Fortune. At the end, you say, please let them get the final puzzle and win. Why? I don't know the person. I don't. They're gonna have to pay taxes on whatever money they win anyway.
That's true.
Right? They don't talk about that. They don't say, "Oh, you just won a car. Guess what? You're a poor person, and now you owe taxes on the car you just won." I mean, they leave this stuff out. Nothing is as simple as they make it out to be. And what's that great movie? Where it's a futuristic game show where they get killed along the way, and the audience is cheering for someone to survive or be killed. It's a wonderful movie, a very exciting adventure thing. We just sit there like audience animals, hoping for somebody else to have a better life than we do. And oh boy, am I being negative? Let's start singing musical comedy songs again, right? Let's go back to Sondheim's On the Steps of the Palace.
Well, what's funny about that is, I'm constantly reminded of my, starting out in theater. Like I knew I wanted to start a theater company before I had any real like foundation in theater.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember having conversations with people who could just quote like crazy, and I was like, I need to do some homework. Like I haven't seen all these shows. I can't call these references. And I do remember at one point Netflix had a lot of movie musicals that you could rent. Back when they had discs, or they still have discs. They just kind of got rid of them. But yeah, so that was that was it before I had my access to the theater community like I have now. But there were just a whole lot of things I didn't know. But I remember going to auditions and hearing the same things all the time, and it's uncanny how out of context an audition piece is.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're never in it. Like you don't have that before moment where the princess is running down the stairs and is now stuck. It's just the song begins.
Yeah.
He's a fairy. Yeah.
Well, but the hardest part of that for everybody, and that's why casting directors need talent also, as do directors. You have to be able to read into it. The problem is,
Yes.
I know people who were terrible at taking tests in school, but were brilliant in their subject matter. So you people have some awful auditions and are brilliant actors.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, while I promote my own history, back in the late 70s or early 80s, I directed the first revival of Streamers by David Rabe. Wonderful show, one of my favorites. It had been originally directed by Mike Nichols at Lincoln Center, and it really moved me. So it's something I wanted to do. I was young. I didn't know I knew anything I was doing, but I got to direct it, and we had a casting director that I knew who was helping me. And he said, I'm bringing in one guy that I think is the right one for this particular part. And he gave the God's worst, awful audition I've ever seen. It's as if he didn't care about anything. And I just turned to the casting director and said, forget it. I don't know who he is, but I don't get it. He said, no, give me another chance. Let me talk to him. I'm going to bring him back. So I gave him another chance, came back, it was still awful. And the casting director just kept begging me. For the fourth audition, we finally came in, we put him together with another actor that I wanted for a different role, and he lit up the stage. And he was the person I needed to play that part. And when we finally did the show, we got great reviews. He was easy to work with, brilliant. He just didn't know how to audition. So, I find that the problem with almost everything we do in the audition process, I started to talk to you about all the college showcases I go to, which, forgive me, people, they're torture. Luckily, they're short. You know, most colleges come in.
They do such a good job preparing them, though. These invitations, you're just like, okay, you're nice and organized. Like they've got a graphic that's got all the headshots under it, or there's like there's like a group photo of everybody just looking their best.
Well, what they're doing is they're letting people on the podcast can't see you.
Listeners can't see my
poses. Their poses are perfect. The issue with all of that, of course, is they're pretending they're already famous, which is why they're enjoying the process. Yeah. And what happens is, in the best of cases, everybody in the showcase is good. Well, how do you choose if there are 3 blonde women exactly 5'7", and they're all singing something from Rodgers and Hammerstein and Sondheim, and they all sound okay, and you go, all right, I don't care, because they look like everyone else, and I have access to 5,000 of these. And, then you have your one black male that every college, that isn't, emphasizing diversity that they bring in. And he has to do something that's appropriate, they think is appropriate, and he comes out and he's okay. And you just go, but I want a personality. I don't know who they are. Because directors like to start with the real person and then expand it to what the part might be, because they can turn into a great actor. So you sit there and you just get upset for the kids who are talented and say, I understand the teachers are trying not to upset the parents, like allowing one kid who is brilliant to shine over somebody who isn't as brilliant. And yet, I want them to. I want someone to show me, if they're the funniest person in the school, be funny and let everyone else not look funny.
Yeah.
But they're not. And they get, 2.5 minutes each? How? Come on. And they all are the same. I beg your pardon.
I do like, what I did like when I was auditioning, when I was holding auditions, is that I guess it's because I didn't have a ton of people to audition. I was able to spend more time with them. I was able to talk to them beforehand. Like there were when I wrote my first show and I was casting for it, I felt like I became friends. I felt like I had a connection before I even heard their monologue.
Yeah.
And it was just because I had an opportunity to talk to them. I'm like, so where are you from? Where'd you go? Oh, that's great. Do you know so-and-so? Like, oh, that's cool. And, so what is it? Everything. And it was just like, wow, this is, oh, by the way, do you want to do your monologue?
Isn't that what a chorus line did for all of us? In that, you get rid of the people who aren't doing or look exactly what you're looking for, because no auditionee can know exactly what you're looking for. So, what a friend of mine who got the part in King and I with Yul Brenner keeps saying that the first thing that the choreographer did was eliminate all the blonde-haired, blue-eyed boys, because there's no one in King and I who's blonde-haired, blue-eyed. So first you eliminate. Then you look for who matches with each other, who has some talent. And, and now, of course, we have to do it digitally, which I think is impossible, other than leaving out who you don't want to look at, right? Because how else do you feel that chemistry coming across the stage unless you're live? It's really hard for me. I wish we would go back to live, which is why I like college showcases, because they're live.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel, yes, it is an extra step, but maybe it does allow for you to say, okay, I can see it, and have them come in and read.
If that's what you're doing. Yeah. But not everyone does.
Yeah. If it's what you're doing. But yeah.
If it's a first step on, it's fine. But there's an actress I worked with. Her audition videos are terrible. Just like again, it's the testing. Is that she looks very dull and bland, and yet I have seen her act, and she's got guts and passion. And when she tries to show the passion digitally, it looks like she's overdoing it because that's not TV acting, and that's what your audition tape is about. It's almost like TV acting, which is different than stage acting. So I don't know. It's for me. I enjoyed the old days, and again, it helps that you have less people in front of you. Right, the cattle calls may be okay for a choreographer to tell whether or not you know how to do a tap dance, but beyond that, it doesn't tell you who the person is and if you want to work with them.
Yes.
Right. Did you ever audition? Were you?
I did.
And what happened?
I had a failed audition at the Walnut Street Theater. Well, it wasn't failed. I just wasn't prepared. I had applied for the Walnut Street Theater apprenticeship when I got out of high school. I filled out the form and I said I am primarily interested in stage management. I've been doing that all through high school, and my secondary was acting. And they called me in for acting, and I had only acted on our high school stage for Fame, the musical, because I often had opportunities on stage because I was filling in, and because I was primarily behind the scenes, and every time I filled in for someone, I ultimately ended up taking over the role. And so in high school, I ended up having the character of Joe Vegas in Fame. In Fame. But of course, I'm not Latino, so so we changed the name to Joe Davis, and everything else was pretty much the same. And they wouldn't let me sing "Can't Keep It Down" on stage because that would have been fun. But it was because the guy who was originally cast in it was ineligible because of grades. And so and he was a senior and I was a freshman, and I filled in for him until they realized he wasn't coming back. And so I got that role. So my freshman year, I was in a leading role in the musical because I filled in for this guy.
Well, my one and only acting thing, which had nothing to do with an audition, in high school, scared the hell out of me. It was Guys and Dolls, and I was backstage doing sound, and somebody got sick, and the director came running to me and said, "I need you to just do this walk-on part. What you are is you're drunk. You go up to the lady in charge of the, what do you call it? The what do you call it? The religious lady. I just lost her name. And you drop your pants, and then you just run off stage. So my one and only part in theater was running on stage, dropping my pants to my boxer shorts, and then running off stage. I felt no excitement. I was not happy. I just wanted to get back to my sound duties. So that's that. But I've been, and I think we may have spoken of this, I've been in many, many, many professional casting rooms, sitting alongside the casting directors and or the director who are auditioning people for some Broadway and off-Broadway shows. And there are brilliant, brilliant auditions, and yet they're not right for what we're looking for. And you want to go, but give this person a job, and there's no job to offer them. And what always bothered me was the fact that nobody contacted that particular actor to say, you were wonderful. Just want to let you know, but we didn't have anything for you.
Yeah.
And, every now and then a casting director will call up somebody and say something nice, but it's usually somebody they already know. I just wish there, with email, some system to just say, you stood out. Sorry, we can't hire you.
Yeah.
It's because ego, it's so hard. I mean, let's go back to the Oscars. Look at what, what's his face? Ryan Reynolds. What he was willing to do you think when he was 20-something years old, walking in an audition room, anybody would know that he should be given a musical comedy number? He'd sit there and he'd be singing on the street where you live, right? Because that's what somebody who looks like that has to sing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I don't know how we overcome this. And then how do we subsidize their lives so they're not broke and leave the business?
Yeah.
Right? They all become waiters in New York or LA. And that's a waste of talent.
Well, I wonder if I know a lot of filmmakers and artists in general are breaking out of those like primary hubs,
Mm-hmm.
For performance and for art making. Like we don't live in LA anymore. We live in Austin, or now that you're realizing it's actually not that hard to get to and from places. Like you can live outside of New York and still work in New York.
Well, I am hoping that's the
And
direction. I really do believe this. And Darnelle, you know this. I'm working very hard with a lot of new playwrights who I think are extremely talented, but there is no place for them to go. And I mean,
yeah,
I don't want to underrepresent that there is no place for them to go. That the theater companies that were taking risks, that were trying new work, they're closing. And those that do exist are still very much working with a small group of people that they already know. So my thing is to let's open up Indiana and Alabama and St. Louis and find these. You can't worry about the audience that isn't willing to see nudity or hear the word, some nasty word, or talk about race or talk about women's issues in a play. You have to allow people to say what they need to say. It's our art form. So you just have to have a place that's willing to let the playwrights see their work on stage. And I'm now going into another topic, aren't I?
no, you're fine, because we had talked before we hit record about playwriting festivals and thinking about where can an artist go with their new work. Like we do have the National New Play Network and the New Play Exchange. We have Playpen here. We have the Farm in New York City. There are a lot of
But those aren't festivals. Those are theater companies.
No. I'm saying like those are opportunities for playwrights to develop their work, but ultimately it's like, where do you go after that? Because a playwright is not trying to be the production company. They have stories to tell, so they're writing stories, and they also realize that they're one part of the overall project. They are the blueprint, and it does take a village. And so they're just writers looking to join the village. And if I'm also wondering if because all the conversations going on in politics and society in general, like if people are trying to tune that out, maybe they just don't want to hear what people have to say as much as we did before.
I don't buy that in the least. I think there's some.
No,
I think there are some people. That's always been true. Different people want to see My Fair Lady only, and other people want to see streamers. Or something very political.
Yeah.
Uh, the bottom line for me is that people's lives are complex when they're at home with families. And what I think, again, talk about the New York area, it is not easy to get your two kids, your spouse, and you in a car or on a train, get to New York, feed them, get into the theater, and then get home late at night. We need to bring theater to them close by in their neighborhood. Theater exiles in a neighborhood. The question
Mm-hmm.
is, why aren't the people, and I'm not saying they're not, but why aren't
Yeah.
the people who live within 10 blocks of there walking to your theater every chance they get? And that's a different question. But the more local spots we have in which we can say, okay, there's a show that we saw in St. Louis with 4 people in it that was very exciting. Let's do it in Indianapolis at a small theater there. Let's do it again in Tampa, Florida. And just do 1 or 2 performances. Here's the trick: we don't have the money to do that. It's too expensive to fly the cast in, to house them. It's too expensive if you have a set, to have a set and costumes. And then you have to schedule people around the fact that they need to have an outside job, like waiting on tables,
Mm.
and then they have to be available. Even if you cast in each city, then you're rehearsing every show. That costs money and time. We have a broken system that, unless we subsidize, and unlike a lot of people, I'm not in favor of it. I get it. We are not brain surgery. How, you can go to the movies, you can watch TV for, well, actually it's expensive now with all the different streaming services. Uh,
Yeah, and the rates are continuously
right.
changing.
So, but for a while it was very affordable. We have theater where you can find a $20 or $40 ticket even on Broadway, but you have to find the date. You have to be able to get there. It's all the hassles of going live somewhere instead of having it in your home. So the question then becomes, what is a reason for somebody to leave their home other than those of us who are theater nerds? We will go to
Yeah.
whatever there is. How do we get someone who has a brain, who is educated or not, but who is interested in theater to have the time and energy to go somewhere? And we are not
See,
asking that question. And then how do we afford it? That's the other.
and also even internally, even in the community, there's still this mindset of like, oh no, like how long is that
Mm-hmm.
show? Like, so for instance, tomorrow I'm going to see the Lehman
Oh,
trilogy.
Lord.
It's three
Right.
hours, two intermissions. Like last month I saw Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf,
Long show.
and these are long
Yeah.
shows, and so I think when you hear that, like when one of those is the option, you start to think about, like, some of you just want to be entertained
Mm-hmm.
and may not want to be entertained for 3 hours. I mean, I hesitated watching Oppenheimer because I knew it was going to be long,
And
and so I was just trying to find a window of time to watch it. We ended up watching it yesterday before the Oscars.
I accepted an invitation from someone who offered me a ticket to see Enemy of the People, which is
Mm,
on Broadway. It's in
yeah.
previews. And the first thing I thought about was, how long is this? I've read this play and seen this play 4 times. I like the play. I think it's relevant. It's a very old play. Why
Mhm.
am I, well, oh, it's free. Okay. I'm sorry. And I'm going to add to the fact that it's free for me, and to the fact that it's also within walking distance of where I live. So
Yeah.
now I get to have lunch with this person, enjoy myself, see a matinee on Wednesday, sit there for 2.5 hours, hopefully seeing some amazing actors, watching.
But you're also making a good point, though.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that made that factored into your decision was its
Mm-hmm.
proximity to where you live. And so the thing is, like, we should be thinking about theater placement like they think about, corner stores. And, like you're trying to serve, if you're trying to serve this community, then, but perhaps consider placing your organization here. And like it's kind of interesting, like to have a theater row in your town.
Mm-hmm.
It's like okay, so all of the theaters in the same place vying for your attention, and how do they serve the community they claim to be here for? You know, it's like if you are like, yes, theater exile is in a neighborhood, and we arguably should only be focused on that neighborhood. We should be focused on trying to get as many people in our surrounding area into the theater, and then we should be thinking about what that audience may potentially want to see on their
Right.
stage.
And then those of us who are theater nerds will find our way there.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, like everybody else will find their way. Like I've always said, the community is not the audience. We're the marketing.
Mm.
We have to we go to the show and we are the cheerleaders, because we're going to go and we're going to find the thing that we liked about it, and that's all we're going to talk about. But together we're going to rip it to shreds, because that's what we do. Like we all think we're better than every other piece of theater. All the money that went into this, it's still trash for some reason. Like, and so it's always like, so I've always had this conversation where I'd say, we keep family business in the family, right? As far as anyone else is concerned, this is the best place to possibly be. Theater is wonderful and vibrant. It is still alive and kicking. It is still a great place to be. But internally, somebody's a jerk. I can't get cast here. This place was late on my payments, like all kinds of stuff. Like that building, that theater is barely keeping its doors open. All that stuff, we don't really talk about that on the outside. I think it's also why it's so hard for us right now, because we've been giving off the appearance that we are the best thing since sliced bread. Like we've always been great. And now that we actually need the community's help, the community is like, well, I thought you were doing fine. I thought you were good without us.
Well, that lie, Broadway's been lying about that since the pandemic, saying that things are coming back. And the truth is, with the exception of the big giant hits, nothing else is getting the audience they need. Now, it's a better audience. It keeps increasing, but it's not what they need. And now, of course, we have 18 shows opening in 2 months, and there's no audience to cover those number of shows. So even great shows that may be opening will close. And that's a horrible thing when you want them to be there, to be available, and you don't want to have to race to see every one of them in 2 months. Now, talking about other communities, Chicago, I just read today about Looking Glass Company, which had closed its doors just months ago, not even a year ago. And they use the time to raise money and to come up with a new, what they call a business plan. I don't call it a business plan. It's a smaller season. That's not a business plan. That's we're going to spend less.
To pivot.
It's not even a pivot. It's pitiful. And the truth is, which we still have, theater needs a location. It needs a venue. What I don't understand is why the theater community hasn't gotten together to say, we're not using this building for the next 2 weeks. Who wants it? Because not everyone can afford to take a risk on a new show by paying rent first. And that needs to change. That is part of the new normal that needs to happen. Broadway included. And off-Broadway. And I understand, you turn on the lights and you have staff, so all of that costs money. So you reduce your expenses to what you have to.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I hear that, and I'm always in favor of that conversation. However, I happen to be the one who cuts checks.
Right.
And it's hard to, it's hard to open your doors and know, like, for example, you know, we've had one-off events, that rent our
Mm-hmm.
space, who have sold out, and, like, in a sense, oversold. I'm so curious as to how this one-off show found enough people for one night.
Oh, I can
And
answer that.
I
First of all,
I think it's,
okay,
I mean, it's more rhetorical. I think it's great that they've done that. But then the producer in me is thinking, like, I can't believe they did all of that and spent pennies to rent this space.
but it's just the opposite. They still probably lost money. And
Yeah.
in addition,
Mm-hmm.
in the New York cabaret scene has always operated with, yes, you can perform in my cabaret space as long as you bring the audience. Between the Green
Yeah.
Room 42, Don't Tell Mama, which is a very famous cabaret space, all these, even the Carlisle Room, you're not
Mm.
making, the artist is not going to make a penny unless the audience pays for it, and then the room takes most of that, and sometimes they require payment up front.
You know what? Let me have a better answer
Go
for
ahead.
that. If the house is dark, why not open it to a you know why not open it to a production? I think that makes a lot of sense if you can still activate your team. So, for example, if we gave the space for a week, but we're able to have concessions, we're able to maybe activate our front of house to support
Mm-hmm.
this. If we're able to still sort of operate, even though we've given the space, then there is still an opportunity for us to,
You know
net.
what? Every idea like that is valid. Every place is going to have a different way to figure out how they survive. Sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
as a former contributor to nonprofit theaters, I mean, at the moment, I'm pretty angry with a lot of them for how they've squandered their money. Um, the the notion would be, if you were to tell me we are going to offer free access to readings and new playwrights during this particular week. To do that, we need to cover that week. And for that, any donations are appreciated. I would donate on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to tell
Yeah.
me we're going to do these readings and we're not going to charge anything, but we're going to ask people for whatever they're willing to give because we need it, that's an experiment. But
Yeah.
I would not walk out of that door without dropping at least a $20 bill in the can.
I think it could be done if we realistically knew what our breakdown was per week.
Mm.
And I don't think everybody knows that. I think they have, like,
Or you,
we had a
like Darnelle
conversation.
Nasabi, or you budget in a way that subsidizes the free weeks. You amortize it
Mm-hmm.
differently. You say, okay, we
Yeah.
have a 45-week year. This is how we amortize our budget, our money. The other
Mm-hmm.
weeks, we don't need any money because we've already paid for a year round staff with our amortized budget. You understand that you cover a year's worth of salaries, a year's worth of production, whatever you come up with, but you figure out how to pay for it within 45 weeks and making up a number, of course. Then
True.
the extra 7 weeks of the year, you are still open, people are still working there, but it's already covered. And for those of
Yeah.
us who don't like donating to people who overpay their CEOs, which is not theater exile, by the way, but I mean, there are places here in New York. If we don't like that, but you tell me I'm subsidizing something that's good for the community or for writers or for, artists of some sort, I will come to do that. And that's where my head's at. I'm just one person. Nobody listens to me anyway, as we both know. You shout, shout.
I'm just Mitch.
Uh,
I'm just Mitch.
and by the way, shall we advertise my book, The Business of Broadway? Okay, on Allworth
Yes.
Press. We haven't done that in a long time. I'm
Sure.
happily,
Plug
I'm happily
away.
still getting $12 in royalty from it. Um, But along the way, what we're just trying to do is to keep theater isn't only about recreating the artwork that we created years ago. The dinner theaters that keep doing Mamma Mia and Fiddler on the Roof, all great, nothing wrong with it. But that can't be all we're doing. In order to have Fiddler on the Roof and Mamma Mia, someone had to do it first and take a risk. So where are those places? How do we subsidize their work so they don't have to raise $20 million to take a chance? And I'm waiting. Yeah. I know there are people smarter than me out there, but I'm still waiting to find the ones who are going to put it into effect, make something happen. And we're a number of years out of the pandemic, and there are very few theaters that are looking to do that kind of big step in another direction.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of theaters closing.
Yes, there are.
So something's got to change, right?
Something's got to change. Something tells me we need an update to the business of Broadway, an insider's guide to working, producing, and investing in the world's greatest theater community. We need an upgrade. We need a revised copy.
Oh, yeah, well...
Come on, Allworth.
We haven't talked about the publishing business, which has had as many changes as theater.
I know, it is so crazy. Like, we are like in this flux. It's like, normally if we were in a situation like this, we'd be downloading tons of information, like giving us guidance on how to move forward. But like I've been saying, like everything was written before the pandemic. And so now like we need new conversations.
I will tell you, and related to exactly what you're saying, I approached my publisher who had to sell his business to a larger publisher. Let's be clear. So he's not in control anymore. And I broached him about, I'd like to interview a whole bunch of people about new ideas for the new normal that theater needs to move forward. And he said, well, what's the answer to it? I said, I don't have the answer. That's why I want to interview all these people. He said, well, unless the title of the book is, I have the answer, no one's going to buy it. So I said, yeah, well, you can make the title anything you want. I still want to interview people. He said, the company above me will not accept that. I've already asked them. And what a horrible answer. You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't have all the answers, but I think we just all need to, I don't know, the people in the industry, if they're listening to this, you need to take a few chances. Just do things that cost less and do more of them. That's my answer at the moment.
Yeah. Let's do more with less. And with that is the business of theater, a working title. I'm just Darnelle Radford.
And I am only Mitch Weiss.
And we will see you at the theater.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnelle Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.